A heart-stopping story awaits. I'm begging you, hurry up. The rancher picked her up, and did the unthinkable. What really happened that day? Watch till the end to uncover the shocking truth. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The Texas horizon stretched endlessly under a bruised sky, heavy with storm clouds that seemed to swallow the sun whole. Emily Harper gripped the steering wheel tighter as the first drops of rain hit her windshield like tiny bullets. The two-lane highway cut through miles of nothing but open fields, telephone poles, and the faint memory of civilization. She had been driving for hours, trying to reach her sister's ranch outside Abilene before dark. But now, as thunder rolled like cannon fire and the wind howled across the plains, she realized the storm had beaten her there. Her old Jeep protested against every gust, wipers fighting a losing battle against the sheets of rain. Emily cursed under her breath, checking her phone for service, nothing but a blank signal bar mocking her. She had thought herself prepared, with a full tank and a map printed just in case. But Texas storms were wild things, they didn't care about plans. When the engine sputtered once, then twice, and finally died, a hollow dread sank into her stomach. She was stranded in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by the rising fury of nature. Emily stepped out, pulling her jacket tight as the rain drenched her within seconds. The wind whipped her hair across her face, blinding her as she looked up and down the empty road. "Come on, please," she muttered, hoping to see headlights through the downpour. But the road stayed dark, endless. She kicked the tire in frustration, her boot sinking into the mud. The temperature was dropping fast, and every instinct screamed that staying put was dangerous. She needed help, any help. She needed someone to find her before the storm did. Just as fear began to gnaw at the edges of her resolve, a distant glow cut through the rain. Headlights. Her pulse leapt. She waved both arms, shouting though her voice was swallowed by the storm. The lights slowed, and for a terrifying moment she wondered if the driver might pass her by. But the truck pulled over, its tires hissing against the soaked asphalt. A tall man climbed down, his silhouette backlit by the headlights, rain sliding off the brim of his hat. He moved with the calm certainty of someone who belonged in this weather. "You all right, ma'am?" he called out, his voice deep, smooth, steady like the earth beneath them. Emily could barely speak through the chattering of her teeth. "My car's dead. I've been stuck for 20 minutes. Please, can you help me?" Lightning flared behind her, illuminating her drenched figure. The man, Luke Carter, though she didn't know his name yet, nodded once, assessing the situation with eyes that missed nothing. "Storm's only getting worse," he said. "You can't stay out here. Come on, I'll take you somewhere dry." There was no hesitation in his tone, only a quiet command that made her want to believe him. She climbed into the cab of his truck, grateful for the blast of heat that met her as the doors shut behind them. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of leather and rain. Emily rubbed her hands together, her pulse still racing. Luke adjusted the heater and glanced at her briefly, his profile sharp under the faint dashboard light. "I'm Luke," he said simply. "Live a few miles west. You picked a bad night to travel these roads." She managed a small, nervous laugh. "You don't say." He smiled faintly, then focused back on the windshield. His hands were rough, his movements efficient, every gesture controlled. Emily noticed the mud on his boots, the faint trace of hay on his jacket, a man of the land, through and through. They drove in silence for a while, the only sounds the pounding rain and the hum of the engine. Emily's fear began to ease, replaced by curiosity. She stole glances at Luke, wondering about the quiet confidence he carried. He seemed older than her by a few years, early 30s maybe, with a strength that didn't need to announce itself. "You live out here alone?" she asked softly, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Mostly," he said. "Got a few horses, some cattle. Nearest neighbors 5 miles east." He paused, a trace of amusement in his voice. "Guess that makes me your closest rescue tonight." The road turned rough as they left the highway, tires sliding slightly through the mud. Emily gripped the seat when lightning cracked so close it rattled the truck. "We'll have to hole up at my ranch till morning," Luke said. "Roads flood fast around here." Emily hesitated, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. "Your ranch." He caught her expression and added, "You'll be safe there. Promise." Something in the way he said it made her believe him, even as her heart hammered in her chest. The world outside blurred into darkness and rain, the storm chasing them like a living thing. They finally pulled up to a wide gate half buried in water, marked Carter Ranch in worn metal letters. Beyond it, the faint outline of a farmhouse glowed through the storm. Luke jumped out to open the gate, rain drenching him instantly, his shirt clinging to the muscle beneath. Emily watched, feeling a strange pull in her chest, a mix of fear, gratitude, and something warmer she couldn't name. When he climbed back in, shaking off the water, he caught her staring and gave a small grin. "Told you we'd make it," he said. For the first time all night, she smiled. The truck climbed a winding dirt path, tires splashing through puddles until they reached the house. Luke parked near the porch, the engine still rumbling. "Stay put," he said, jumping out again. Before she could protest, he was at her door, opening it and offering his hand. "Careful," he said. "Mud's slick." She took his hand, and the warmth of his grip surprised her. He guided her inside, where the air was thick with the smell of wood smoke and rain. She felt suddenly aware of the silence that followed when he closed the door, the storm raging outside, and only the two of them inside this safe, isolated world. Emily's heart still pounded, though she wasn't sure if it was fear or something else. Luke moved through the room with quiet assurance, lighting the fire and tossing her a towel. "You should change out of those wet clothes," he said gently, his back turned as he tended to the flames. "There's a blanket by the couch." His voice held no threat, only concern, but still, she hesitated. It had been a long night of uncertainty, and yet, in this stranger's presence, she felt something unexpected. A flicker of trust, a warmth that reached deeper than the fire could. Outside, thunder rolled again, but inside the ranch house, the storm had met its match. The fading sun stretched golden streaks across the endless Texas plains as Caleb Brooks parked his rusty Ford by the barn. He wiped the sweat off his brow with the back of his sleeve and watched the sky burn in orange and crimson hues. The evening air smelled of hay and dust. It had been a long day at the ranch, a quiet one too. Caleb had gotten used to that kind of silence, the kind that settles in when you've lived alone too long. Since his wife passed, he hadn't shared a word at dinner with anyone but his dog. He was just locking up the tool shed when he noticed something strange. A dust cloud in the distance, small at first, rising like smoke from the old dirt road that led to his property. Few people ever came this way. His land stretched miles from the nearest town, and strangers weren't common out here. Caleb squinted, shading his eyes with his hand. A beat-up sedan appeared, limping its way up the road with one broken headlight and a body full of dents. Its engine coughed and sputtered before dying completely near his fence. Caleb's gut tightened. Out here, when someone showed up uninvited, it rarely meant good news. He rested his hand on the small revolver holstered at his side, a habit he never dropped, and waited. The car door creaked open, and a woman stepped out slowly. She looked lost, her dress torn, her hair tangled by the wind. She carried a large burlap sack in both arms like she was holding something fragile, something precious, or dangerous. Her boots crunched on gravel as she stumbled forward, her eyes darting nervously around the open field. "Evening, ma'am," Caleb called out, keeping his tone calm but firm. "You lost." The woman didn't answer right away. She looked exhausted, pale, like she hadn't eaten in days. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Please," she whispered, clutching the sack tighter, "I need your help." Caleb frowned, lowering his hand from his holster. "What kind of help?" he asked. Her lips quivered. "Please, take them off," she said. The words were so soft the wind nearly carried them away. Caleb blinked. "Take what off?" The woman looked down at the sack, her knuckles white from gripping it. "The bindings," she said quietly. "I can't do it myself." Her voice broke on the last word. Caleb hesitated, staring at the sack. He could see faint movement inside, like something shifting slowly, and a soft sound, almost a whimper. "You got animals in there?" he asked. She shook her head sharply, tears forming in her eyes. "Please," she said again, "before it's too late." Every instinct in Caleb's body screamed to walk away, but there was something in her face, fear, desperation, that made him stay. He sighed and nodded toward the barn. "All right," he said finally. "Come on. We'll take a look under some light." She followed him silently, her boots dragging through the dirt. The air was heavy with the smell of rain as clouds gathered over the horizon. Inside the barn, Caleb switched on the old hanging bulb that swung gently, throwing long shadows on the wooden walls. The woman set the sack down on a work table. The sound it made wasn't right. It was too heavy, too solid, like whatever was inside wasn't an object but something, alive. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "You sure about this?" he asked. She didn't look at him, just nodded. "Please," she whispered, "just open it." He grabbed his pocketknife and crouched next to the sack. The rope tying it was thick, crusted with mud and something darker that he didn't want to identify. He hesitated again. "What am I gonna find in here?" he asked. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You'll see," she said faintly. "They've been waiting for someone else to take them." Caleb didn't understand a word of that, but he started cutting anyway. The blade sliced through the rough rope with a dry snap. As the knot loosened, the sack sagged open slightly, releasing a strange odor, metallic, damp, and earthy, like iron mixed with decay. Caleb coughed and pulled the opening wider. The air inside was cold. He reached in cautiously, his gloved hand brushing against something soft, smooth, and small. He froze. Then he pulled the fabric open completely, and what he saw made his stomach twist violently. Inside the sack were two small shoes, old, muddy, and still tied, but not just shoes. They were still attached to tiny, lifeless feet. Caleb stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the stool behind him. His face went pale, his breathing ragged. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, his heart pounding. "What is this?" The woman didn't answer. She just collapsed to her knees, clutching her face, sobbing uncontrollably. "I told you," she cried, her voice echoing off the wooden walls. They wouldn't stop crying. I had to make them quiet. Caleb's mind reeled, his body frozen in horror. He wanted to run to the door, to call the sheriff, but his legs refused to move. The air in the barn felt thick and cold, pressing against his chest. He stared at her in disbelief. "Lady, what the hell are you talking about?" he whispered. She looked up at him through her tangled hair, her eyes wide and wet. "You can hear them too, can't you?" she said softly, almost pleading. Caleb frowned, shaking his head. "Hear who?" he asked. Then, the barn fell silent for a heartbeat before a faint sound reached his ears. It was soft, muffled, like a child's sob coming from deep inside the sack. Caleb froze completely. He wanted to believe it was an animal, the wind, anything but what it sounded like. He glanced at the woman, but she was smiling now, a hollow, broken smile. "They never stop," she said. "They're still here. They want someone else to take them." Caleb's throat went dry. "What do you mean, take them?" he demanded. She laughed weakly, shaking her head. "You'll see," she whispered. "Once you've opened the sack, they know your name." The light above them flickered, the shadows stretching and crawling along the walls like something alive. Caleb took a step back, the cold creeping up his arms. The woman's eyes rolled toward the sack again, her voice trembling. "Please, take them off." The barn door creaked as the wind outside began to howl. Caleb could feel his heart pounding against his ribs. "I'm calling the sheriff," he muttered, reaching for his phone. But the moment he did, a sudden gust slammed the door shut. The bulb flickered violently, and for an instant, he thought he saw movement near the table, something small, shifting inside the sack. The sobbing grew louder, echoing now, surrounding him. He dropped the phone. The woman covered her ears and screamed. Caleb could hardly breathe. His eyes darted toward the sack again, and the faint shape of two small figures began to rise beneath the fabric. He stumbled backward, terrified, knocking over a bucket as the sound grew into faint, childlike laughter mixed with sobs. "Stop it," he shouted, but his voice sounded small against the storm. The woman was crying now, clutching her knees. "You shouldn't have opened it," she whispered. Caleb's hands trembled uncontrollably. He didn't know what kind of nightmare had walked into his barn, but he knew one thing: something inside that sack was not meant for this world.